What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all well, and welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. As always, this is not going to be a main episode of the Let's Play. This is going to be a Codex lore reading episode. If that's not something you're interested in, go ahead and click away now. If that is something you're interested in, then let's dive in. We just got to Orzammar in the Let's Play, so we got plenty of things to dive into here. Learn about some Dwarven culture. Some new things in creatures, too. So, first up, we, of course, have Nug. Hip deep in mad nugs, our screams deafen their keen ears. We will be nug poop. From songs that only nugs can hear by Paragon Ebrian, 584 Exalted. The nug is an omnivore common to the deep roads, a hairless creature that is almost blind as well as completely docile. It spends most of its time wading in shallow pools as well as mud pits, feeding on small insects, worms, and, in a pinch, limestone and simple metals. Indeed, the digestive system of the Nug is legendary, able to make a meal out of almost anything a Nug finds on the cavern floors. Nugs reproduce rapidly, spreading into any niche within the deep roads they can find, and serve to support a variety of predators such as giant spiders and deep stalkers. So too, do dwarves make meals out of them. Nugs are, in the poorer slum portions of Orzammar, one of the most common sources of meat available. Some dwarves even domesticate the creatures, claiming to find the creatures' high-pitched squeaks pleasing. Nugs are like the little bunnies of the deep roads. Culture and history. The castes. Visitors to Orzammar should keep in mind that the hierarchies of dwarven society are much more complex than our own. It is easy to gravely insult a man simply by mistaking his position. Since this can lead to unnecessary loss of life and limbs, I will attempt to mitigate the danger for my fellow travelers. The society of Orzammar is divided into nobles, warriors, smiths, artisans, miners, merchants, and servants. Now, you are undoubtedly saying to yourself, we have all those divisions among our own people. This is a dangerous misconception. Certainly, we do have nobility, artisans, merchants, and these positions are largely inherited from our parents. However, the younger children of noblemen often choose to be artisans or soldiers. The sons of merchants may join the army, or become servants, or apprentice themselves to a craftsman. This is all freely chosen. Limited, perhaps, by the circumstances of birth, but still chosen. What is a matter of choice for most human folk is dictated entirely by birth for dwarves. No one may become a smith who was not born to smith caste parents. A servant who marries a noblewoman will never be a noble himself, and although his daughters would be nobles, his sons would be servants, for daughters inherit the caste of their mother, while sons inherit the caste of their father. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetive. Life in Orzammar. The dwarves of Orzammar are quite unlike those found in most human cities. Although Orzammar derives its vast wealth from trade with human kingdoms, all dwarves who come to the surface to trade are stripped of their position in society. Dwarven merchants are so ubiquitous in human cities that many people labor under the impression that all dwarves are merchants, or that their whole race worships coin and trade. But these surface dwarves are atypical creatures, the ones willing to give up all ties to their kin and sacrifice their rank in order to conduct business. Below ground, the dwarves are a people obsessed with honor, their own, and that of their family. Most nobles incorporate chainmail even into formal gowns, because slights and insults often turn deadly. They are a people who revere excellence and strive to achieve it in all things. Even members of the servant caste have been elevated to Paragons, usually posthumously, in recognition of remarkable service. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetive. Deep Roads. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the deep roads as they once were. They were the network of tunnels that joined the tags together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art, with centuries of planning demonstrated in the geometry of their walls, with the statues of the Paragons that watch over travelers, with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. The cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by the magisters of old. A raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could only have been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the deep roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn rule the deep roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the deep roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was to those black bastards forever. Think that there are genlocks crawling over Bonamar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built out there. Every dwarf who goes out and comes back says that it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spread a little further. And the cloud gazers think the Darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface. Huh. One day, when Orzammar is gone for good, they'll find out differently. Those Darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they'll do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript of a conversation with a member of the Dwarven mining caste, 890 blessed. The City of Orzammar. The dwarves are lauded for their craftsmanship, and the City of Orzammar is one of their finest works. Orzammar lies at the heart of the Frostback Mountains, deep underground. The city arcs outward from the royal palace, which is built around a natural lava vent, continually fountaining liquid rock, which both lights and heats the entire cavern. The topmost tier of Orzammar is home to the noble caste, with their palaces fanning out in both directions from the court of the king, as well as the Shaperate, which serves as a repository for all dwarven knowledge. The lower tier is the commons, where the merchant caste holds sway, and where the finest works of Orzammar's craftsmen are for sale. In the center of the river of lava, connected to the commons by a causeway, are the proving grounds, a sacred arena where the dwarves, by ancient tradition, settle their disputes. On one side of the fiery river are the ruins of old dwarven palaces fallen into disrepair, which the locals call Dust Town, now home to the city's casteless. On the other side of the river are the deep roads, which once joined the sprawling dwarven empire together, but now, after centuries of Darkspawn incursions, are largely sealed off. Nearly all knowledge of this network of underground passages has been lost, even to its builders. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. We have a really cool one here. I love the Legion of the Dead, even just the name. Legion of the Dead. Yes, Stone's greeting, friend. You will fight ceaselessly in the Legion of the Dead. Motto of the Legion of the Dead. The Legion accepts all. So I was told by one of the Legionnaires himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance to the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gathered slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied at their funerals the night previous. For that is the nature of the Legion. They are all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion, so long as he is willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final goodbye is said to family and loved ones. Any material goods are dispersed to heirs, and last words are said, and then it is done. The new Legionnaire marches out into the deep roads, never to return. The Legion fights against the Darkspawn to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so that their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupted join so their debts might be forgiven. Very few join for a last chance at glory, but the Legion takes them too. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortress of Bonamar, once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest of their Paragons. Bonamar is a holy place. It's lost the last great blow against the Dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orzammar. But capture it or no, all of these warriors will die in the deep roads. It is a sobering thought, and I now know why the dwarves say the Legion's charge is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves, by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. So basically, as soon as you sign up for the Legion of the Dead, you have a funeral for yourself. You say your goodbyes to your family, you give up everything you own, and you dedicate your life to fighting against the Darkspawn. If that ain't cool and badass, I don't know what else is. It's somewhere of a mix between, like, Spartans, the Foreign Legion. There's a very cool faction of the dwarves. My favorite faction of the dwarves, actually. I love the Legion of the Dead. And if we can somehow get them on board for the Blight, if we somehow help them in the deep roads and get them on board, it'll be a hell of a sight. House Aeducan, Shield of Orzammar. The Assembly has never named a Paragon with so little disagreement as there was for Paragon Aeducan. No naysayers, only a single abstention. His worthiness was unquestionable, his favor with the ancestors clear. But family rumor says that the man himself was deeply troubled, prone to fits of melancholy and self-doubt, never satisfied with his great achievement in protecting Orzammar. He died cursing that he had not managed to save the outlying Taigs. Before he rose to Paragon, he was of little note. The memories tell us that he never entered a single proving, never sought to elevate his place among the warrior caste. He spent most of his years prior to the First Blight fighting skirmishers in the deep roads, keeping them free from service bandits, content to live quietly with his wife and daughters. When the Blight began, it caught Orzammar in the midst of a vicious inter-house war. Most of the warrior caste was caught up in the feuding, for as word of attacks poured in, each great house demanded that the army be sent to defend their Taig, and no house would agree to sacrifice their own holdings for the safety of any others. The assembly was so utterly tied up with the infighting that the Darkspawn spread, unchecked, to the gates of Orzammar herself. In the chaos, Aeducan grudgingly took command of the armies. He enlisted the aid of the mining caste to collapse overrun passages, called upon the smith caste to supply them with arms, and bypassed the assembly and the nobles entirely. With his leadership, Orzammar was saved from annihilation. For his insubordination, he was made Paragon. Yet he always considered it a defeat. From a history of Aeducan, Paragon, King, Peacemaker, by scholar Gertek. So the Aeducan king that just died in here was actually a real badass, and he saved the dwarves from complete annihilation. And of course, a good general would always consider it a defeat. They didn't win, they survived. They lost all the Taigs on the outside, but they kept Orzammar, which is a victory in and of itself. But for a man like this, that would never be enough. A good man. The Paragons. As I studied among the dwarves, I became aware that their social system was as rigid as the stone that surrounded them. From the lowest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf has a caste, a rigid social standing which dictates what he may do and how he may do it. What fascinated me then was that the dwarves, stubborn and proud as they may be, have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Any dwarf who has made an achievement of significance can be named Paragon, elevating that dwarf above all others. To become a Paragon is to be recognized as, essentially, a living ancestor. Your words are considered ineffable, and the dwarves liken you unto a god. Your family, those you choose to ascend with you, become the founders of a new line of nobility. Indeed, every existing noble house among the dwarves traces its line back to a founding Paragon. It is a rare thing, however. In my visit, I learned that only one Paragon has been elected in generations, the Smith Bronca, exalted for her discovery of smokeless coal. I met the Paragon Bronca only once during my stay, and I consider it an odd occasion indeed. Surrounded by those of her house, this ill-tempered woman was draped in the finest clothing and jewelry, and was obviously revered even above the highest nobles, perhaps above even the king. Yet she seemed to enjoy none of it. The burden of being a living legend is great, it appears. Statues of the Paragons are found throughout Orzammar, though nowhere so prominently than in the Hall of Heroes through which one passes on entering from the surface. It is a breathtaking sight to behold. Great works of stone, all seeming to hold up the ceiling above. It is meant to impress upon visitors to Orzammar of all who have gone before, I think. It is also meant to remind dwarves going to the surface, and thus abandoning their brethren forever, of all they are leaving behind. From Stone Halls of the Dwarf, by Brother Genitive, Chantry Scholar. Orzammar Politics. As dangerous as it is to mistake a dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliances among the noble houses of Orzammar. Everyone in the city is allied with someone, whether by blood or by word. The nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is the domain of the merchant caste, but they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in an artisan's work, and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as a measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the service of a prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever-changing. It is usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that, things grow into a tangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them, or from their own bloodlines, win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize become sought after or well regarded, or when the merchants they invest in become successful. The degrees of power that these achievements confer is so murky, even to the dwarves, that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each other to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles, or whose servants have the best manners. Nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaim, for the rank of the patron is the rank of the client. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the assembly, where the Deshers, representatives of each noble house, meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain the support of the Deshers. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. Dwarven Faith. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for, unlike the elves, who were literally abandoned by their gods, or the Tevinters, who worship dragons, the dwarves have no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name they give to the earth itself. This seems practical for a people living underground, if perhaps a bit unimaginative. For guidance in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors, who are said to have returned to the stone, communicate their wishes to the living via brutal trials by combat called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the Shaper, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings, are the Paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness that they are elevated almost to godhood. These are the great figures holding up the hallway that leads from the surface, the first glimpse of Orzammar that outsiders see. From In Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of a Chantry Scholar, Brother Genetivi. Books and Songs. The Legion of Steel. Paragon Caradon vanished in the 11th year of the reign of King Baltor, and with the Paragon the entire process for golem manufacture was lost. Expeditions were sent into the deep roads to track him, but the Darkspawn drove them all back. Finally, in the 2nd year of the reign of Queen Getha, 126 golems, the entire Legion of Steel, were sent to recover the Paragon. None returned. The Shaper of Golems refused to support any further attempts to find Caradon, and the Paragon was officially declared dead. The Shaper never recovered from the loss of an entire legion of golems, and never again allowed an all-golem regiment in the deep roads. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Genetivi, Chantry Scholar. And this would be why there are no more golems in Orzammar. They sent a massive unit of 120 of them out into the deep roads and they never came back. From then on, they treat golems like the rare substance they are and just refuse to use them unless in dire needs. In praise of the humble Nug. I once served a human some Nug, and he proclaimed that it was like eating an unholy union of pork and hare. The idea disturbed him so much that he declined to finish his serving, and made himself content with some stale bread. Of course, this only goes to show that surfacers, human or otherwise, have tragically unrefined palates. The Nug is surely the most delicious animal I have ever tasted. Only a dead man would not salivate at the thought of a tender morsel of roast Nug melting in his mouth. The Paragon Varan, although his house has fallen, shall always be remembered for discovering the wonders of Nug flesh. Admittedly, it was discovered only out of desperation, when he was separated from his legion and lost in the deep roads for a week, but we won't hold that against the good Paragon. While Nug pancakes and nuggets, my own children love these, are the Nug dishes one encounters most often, Nug can be prepared in other interesting and elegant ways. The late King Ansgar Aeducan adored Nug, seared on a hot metal plate and finished in the oven, and dressed in a cream sauce flavored with deep mushrooms. You must be careful when using the mushrooms from the deep roads, because they often grow close to Darkspawn bodies. They say that this is what gives them their unique flavor and intoxicating scent, but it also means that consuming too many of them may result in curious afflictions of the mind. From In Praise of the Humble Nug by Bragan Tolbin, honored chef to House Aeducan. Traditional Dwarven folk songs. Nug sits in the mud, Nug wiggles his ears. You can catch the Nug, he slips away. Nug gets to live another day. Nug sits in the mud, Nug wiggles his toes. You hook the Nug, he slips away. Now the Nug runs off to play. Nug sits in the mud, Nug wiggles his nose. You tickle the Nug, he laughs away. Now the Nug sits on my plate. Nug pancakes, a well-loved Dwarven nursery rhyme. The key to the city. While your concerns have merit, the assembly has made itself clear. Space within the tag is at a premium, but the intended function of the hall merits the additional resources committed. The statues of the Paragons must be the core of the Hall of Heroes. There is no other placement that so benefits dwarven interests. It is the first glimpse that surface ambassadors have of Orzammar, an introduction not just to our living ancestors, but also to the stone from which we were born. They must see it shaped before they can understand the complexity of its raw form. The hall must also serve a second purpose, as a last sight for departing brethren. Those who choose to leave must do so with the heavy gaze of their ancestors at their backs. It is a reminder of duty and of consequence. We will promote all manner of trade, but also reinforce that those who leave for too long will return as strangers to the stone. From a report of the Assembly Zoning Commission. Pursuant to Order 51A, no dwarf of indeterminate caste may conduct business in the Commons. This was subsequently clarified by the Assembly to mean that the owning and operating of stalls or kiosks is limited to those of identified and approved house names with traceable ancestor lineage of at least 3 generations. Exceptions include individual purchases of goods or services from established stalls or kiosks, provided the funds are presented at the opening of the transaction, at the discretion of the stall or kiosk owner. I'm sure you understand the need to maintain strict quality control over all goods and services that flow through Orzammar, especially when we are making a concerted effort to encourage outside investment. The standards of Dust Town and that of the common brand are simply not sufficient. Your trade permit is hereby denied. From a judgment of the Assembly Trade Council regarding Meadle's reclaimed wares. It is agreed that no rules of procedure were explicitly broken, but a 5-day filibuster is nonetheless worthy of censure. Division of House Orzammar property was deliberated for a full session, and forfeiture of the southern estate deemed a necessity. Since the birth of young Kaid necessitates his elevation to noble status, and it is unthinkable for a noble's family to live in the slums, it is the responsibility of the father to accommodate the placement of his family. It is not possible to simply generate new space in the Diamond Quarter without compromising Taig's structural integrity. Lord Dace's comment that, if Lord Orzammar didn't want a new heir, he shouldn't have slummed for a concubine, was indeed inappropriate, but the proper procedure for resolution through proving was followed. Both parties agreed to accept his retraction, and that matter is considered separate and closed. The decision of the Assembly regarding the placement of the Dunkirk clan stands. From a writ of the Assembly Zoning Council regarding the placement of the Dunkirk clan. The Shaper's Life. The blessing of the Shaper is given only to those who walk with the stone. It is a path that cuts deep, and the road is far from secure, but those who desire to work in memory must first honor it. Document the stone, protect her, and present a new history to the memories. Only then will the blessing of the Shaper be upon you. From the Shaper's Life. Orzammar has carved a legacy from the stone, but history is more than the comings and goings that fill the streets. These caverns are old cuts and well-traveled. The true will of the stone is revealed far from the halls of politics and commerce. The Shaper must step away from the familiar and seek out revelations from the frontier or buried secrets from paths abandoned. The Shaper must first walk away if he is to return. First steps from the Shaper's life. And last but not least, we of course have Unbound. We found the final piece of this quest, so I'll go ahead and read the whole journal. The riders follow after every town, ever since my lucky break deciphering the story. I see it now, how they take the locals closest to me, preventing rest or kinship. I thought this a road to glory, but I am dogged at every step by his talons. Gax Kang, curse his name in the day I heard it. Journal excerpt from an unnamed, long-dead adventurer. You asked, so I'm telling. Don't go. The stories talk of the riches, but never the names. Never where they supposedly spent their wealth. I heard the same tales as Aladdin Denerim. Felt the same pull, but it's a lie, son. They may paint a trail, but once you're on it, does it lead to the beast or back to you? Unsigned letter, father to son. 3 weathered parchments with 3 versions of the same incomplete story. Excerpt. And when his kingdom fell, so disappeared the stolen riches of an age. The beast, the unbound, dormant until one of true spirit claims his throne. So must hunt the hero of his people, the principled who would search for ancient evil. This is how they can make a real difference. Scribbled in the corner in a shaky hand. 3 pages, 3 ages, same story updated. Same as the tavern song, but older. Signature torn on purpose, but compare and get Vilm Madan. All from him. How? Alrighty, guys, that's going to be a wrap for this episode. We are all caught up on the Codex, so it is time to finally jump back into exploring Orzammar. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. If you want to support the cause and help improve the channel, as always, there is a tip link in the description below. Otherwise, stay tuned and I'll see you guys soon with more Dragon Age Origins. Take care, guys. Have a good day.